Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
When I first moved into that neighborhood, I figured the HOA was just one of those background annoyances you deal with. Pay the dues, keep the grass short, don't park a boat in the driveway. Simple stuff. I couldn't have been more wrong. It started small, a plain white envelope on my porch. I thought it was a welcome note. Nope, it was a violation. 2 decorative items on front porch. Only one permitted under HOA guidelines. I had 2 chairs, 2 metal patio chairs, not a sculpture, not a sign, not even a plant. Just chairs. I stood there staring at the paper, thinking maybe it was a joke. It wasn't. The letter was signed by Malcolm, our HOA president. I hadn't even met the guy yet, but that name was already everywhere. Everyone had a story about him. My neighbor Vivian saw me reading the letter and came walking over. She had that look that said, "Welcome to hell." "Let me guess," she said. "Decorations violation? 2 chairs." I said, "Apparently that's excessive." Vivian laughed but shook her head. "Malcolm fined me last year for a hanging plant. Said it violated symmetry or some crap like that." I said, "He must be a blast at parties." She leaned in a bit. "He's worse than you think. He drives around at night looking for violations. Keeps a flashlight in his car." I thought she was kidding, but she wasn't smiling. I went back inside and read the rules again. The rules and regulations, all 32 pages of them. Section 5, paragraph 3. Each residence may display 1 decorative item visible from the street. Porches included. No mention of what counted as a decoration. Just 1. I sat at my kitchen table, flipping through the pages, and started laughing. The absurdity of it hit me. 2 chairs were a violation, but they didn't say what kind of decoration was allowed. If they wanted 1 decoration, fine, they'd get 1. That night, I spent hours online searching. I scrolled through pages of lawn ornaments, statues, inflatable things, and light-up monstrosities. I wanted something that would make their heads explode. Around midnight, I found it. A 7-foot inflatable sphere, clear plastic, with some kind of air-blown mermaid figure floating inside. It flapped around like one of those dealership wind dancers, only worse. It was so ugly it was perfect. I hit buy now, without a second thought. A few days later, Clara, another neighbor, stopped by while I was sweeping the porch. She carried her dog under one arm like a baby. "You're the guy with the chairs, right?" she asked. "Guilty," she smirked. "Malcolm got me for a wind chime. Said it was a noise violation. I told him it didn't even make a sound unless there was wind. He said that was irrelevant." I couldn't tell if she was joking. She wasn't. That evening, I got an email notification. My package had shipped. It was supposed to arrive Friday. Friday morning, I was up early, coffee in hand, waiting. When the delivery truck rolled up, it took 2 guys to unload the boxes. Big ones, marked fragile display unit. The driver gave me a look. "You sure this is for you?" "Yeah," I said. "This is going to be fun." He shrugged and left. I dragged the boxes onto the lawn and started slicing the tape open. A mass of plastic spilled out, followed by an air pump that looked like it belonged at a carnival. I plugged it in, and the thing started to inflate, slow at first, then faster. I could already see the shape forming. Huge, shiny, ridiculous. And that's when I heard the voice. "Morning," someone said from behind me. I turned around. There he was, Malcolm, the man himself, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. He looked like he'd been waiting for this moment. His smile wasn't friendly. "What exactly is that?" he asked. I looked at the half-inflated blob and said, "Decoration." His brow tightened. "What kind of decoration?" "The one the rules allow," I said. He scribbled something on his clipboard. "You're aware there are standards for community appropriateness?" I said, "Sure. That's why I'm following the rules to the letter." He looked back at the sphere, which was now fully inflated. The mermaid thing inside was twirling in slow motion, hair waving like seaweed. The entire thing shimmered in the sunlight. It was hideous. Malcolm's jaw tightened. "You can't be serious." "Completely serious," I said. "You said 1 decoration." "That's 1. He stared at me for a long second, face twitching. Then he muttered something under his breath and turned away. "I'll be reviewing this with the board," he said. I smiled. "You do that." He walked off, fast, shoulders stiff. I stood there, hands on my hips, watching the thing flap around in the breeze. Cars slowed down. People stared. A couple kids laughed from the sidewalk. I didn't care. The rules were the rules. And for once, They were working in my favor. Vivian came by later that afternoon, holding her phone up to record. "Oh my God," she said, laughing. "That's the best thing I've ever seen." I said, "Think Malcolm will appreciate my artistic expression?" She grinned. "He's probably writing your name on the dartboard right now." We both laughed. That night, as the sun went down, I turned on the built-in lights inside the sphere. It glowed like some alien egg. The mermaid spun slowly in the middle. It was perfect. Around 9, I saw Malcolm's car drive by. Twice. He slowed down both times. The second time, he stopped for a full minute. I raised my coffee mug toward him. He didn't wave back. By the next morning, a crisp envelope was on my doorstep again. Another violation notice. Inappropriate decorative display, it said. No explanation. No details. Just that. I took a picture of it, printed it out, and taped it to the sphere. Then I poured myself more coffee and sat outside in one of my illegal chairs to admire my work. It didn't take long before a small group of neighbors came by. Vivian, Marcus, even Clara. They all stood around laughing, pointing, whispering. Word was spreading. Then I noticed Malcolm again, standing at the end of my driveway, phone out, snapping pictures, face red. He saw me watching him, lowered the phone, and shouted, "This isn't over." I leaned back in my chair and said, "Didn't think it was." His face went tight, and he stormed off. The air pump kept humming, the mermaid kept spinning, and the ridiculous globe shimmered in the sun. I could tell from the way Malcolm marched down the street that I'd just started a war. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see what he'd do next. By the next morning, I had 3 more envelopes waiting for me. They were all from the HOA. Same print, same tone, but each one sounded more desperate than the last. Indecent display, public nuisance, visual distraction. All of that because of one stupid decoration. I couldn't stop laughing. I lined the letters up on the kitchen counter like trophies. By mid-afternoon, I was back outside, tightening the anchor lines on the inflatable. The thing swayed slightly in the wind, casting weird shadows across the street. I was halfway through when Marcus came walking over from across the road, sunglasses on, holding a soda can. He said, "You're the guy with the sea monster." "Huh." "It's a mermaid," I said. He grinned. "Sure it is. The whole neighborhood's talking about it. Malcolm's losing it. He's called 2 emergency meetings already." "Over this?" I asked. "Over you," Marcus said. He said, "You're challenging community standards." He actually used that phrase. I chuckled. "I'm just following the rules." "Exactly why this is great," Marcus said, sitting down on my porch step. "You found the loophole. You might be my hero." Just then, a blue sedan rolled up. Out stepped Lydia, one of the board members. She wore sunglasses the size of saucers and carried a clipboard of her own. "Good afternoon," she said in that fake polite tone that made my skin crawl. "I need to take a few photos for documentation." "Documentation of what?" I asked. She gave the inflatable a disgusted look. "Of the ongoing violation." Marcus couldn't help himself. "You mean the one that doesn't exist?" Lydia's mouth tightened. "Please don't interfere, Mr. Marcus," he said, smiling. "Just Marcus." She ignored him and started snapping pictures from every angle. I leaned on the porch rail, arms crossed, watching her circle the decoration like she was investigating a crime scene. When she finished, she said, "The board will be issuing a formal notice. I suggest you remove this object before we escalate." "Escalate," I said. "That sounds serious." Her lips twitched. "We'll be in touch." She walked off, heels clicking on the pavement like she was trying to make a point. Marcus let out a low whistle. "They're really losing it." "Good," I said. "Maybe they'll trip over their own rules." That evening, the wind picked up. The mermaid whipped around inside the globe, smacking against the sides. It made this soft thudding noise that echoed across the yard. I was sitting out front when Vivian came walking by with her dog. She said, "You're not backing down, are you?" "Not a chance," I said. She smiled. "Good. People around here have been scared of that board for years. It's nice to see someone push back." We chatted for a while, laughing about Malcolm's obsession with porch symmetry. Then she mentioned something that made my stomach tighten a bit. "Be careful," she said. "Malcolm's the type who doesn't let things go. He'll make it personal." "I'm counting on it," I said. Later that night, around midnight, I heard a strange noise outside. A dull thump, then the faint hiss of air. I looked out the window and saw movement near the sphere. Someone was crouched by the base of it. I opened the door fast, and the figure bolted, a man in dark clothes, running down the street. The inflatable sagged slightly but didn't deflate. Whoever it was had tried to unplug it. I marched over, plugged it back in, and stood there watching it fill up again. The mermaid twisted slowly as the blower roared. The next morning, I printed out a sign. Surveillance camera in operation. Smile. I planted it right in front of the globe. That did it. By noon, Malcolm was back. He stormed up the walkway, waving a fresh piece of paper in his hand. You can't post that sign. I said, why not? It's my yard. He jabbed the air with the paper. It's harassment. You're implying your neighbors are criminals. I said, I'm implying nothing. Just encouraging smiles. His face turned red. This is not funny. It's hilarious, I said. You wrote the rule. I'm just decorating. He looked like he wanted to explode. This will not end well for you. I leaned against the railing. It's already not ending well for you, Malcolm. He glared at me, turned, and stomped back to his car. That afternoon, 6 more envelopes showed up in my mailbox. All from the HOA. I didn't even open them. I just stacked them on the counter with the rest. Clara came by that evening, shaking her head. You've got him rattled, she said. He was at the park earlier, yelling about public indecency and moral standards. I must be really ruining his day, I said. She laughed. You have no idea. As the sun went down, I turned on the lights again. The globe lit up, spinning lazily. Kids on bikes stopped to stare. A few adults walked by pretending not to look. I sat in my chair, sipping a beer, feeling oddly satisfied. The wind made the whole thing shimmer. It looked ridiculous, but it was mine. Then the mail truck pulled up again. The driver got out, holding a certified letter. Need a signature, he said. I signed, opened it, and read, Notice of Escalation. You are hereby ordered to remove the inappropriate decorative display within 24 hours or face legal action by the Homeowners Association. I looked up at the spinning mermaid, then at Marcus, who had wandered back over with another soda. He raised an eyebrow. That's serious now, I said. Apparently, it's going to court. He grinned. You're actually going to fight them, aren't you? Oh yeah, I said, smiling. It's time to bring in some help. Who? He asked. Marcus, I said, leaning forward. Didn't you mention your friend Desmond's a lawyer? He stared for a moment, then laughed. Oh, this just got good. I folded the letter neatly and tucked it into my pocket. The inflatable kept humming behind us, loud and steady. I said, let's make this official. By the time the weekend rolled around, the neighborhood was buzzing. Every driveway conversation, every dog-walking chat circled back to my inflatable mermaid globe. Some thought it was funny, others thought it was disgraceful, but everyone knew about it. And Malcolm? He'd gone full dictator mode. The man was holding impromptu meetings in his garage like it was a war room. People told me he had binders of evidence, including photos, timestamps, and even supposed witness statements. So when I finally called Desmond, Marcus's lawyer friend, I didn't sugarcoat it. I told him everything. The letters, the attempted sabotage, the sign, the threats. Desmond listened in silence, then said, sounds like they don't have a leg to stand on. He showed up the next afternoon, calm, confident, and way too well dressed for our cracked sidewalks and manicured lawns. He had that easy smile that told you he'd been through worse nonsense before. We sat on the porch while the globe spun slowly behind us. Desmond took notes, flipping through the pile of violation letters like he was reading bad comedy. He said, this is amateur hour. They keep citing rules that contradict each other. They can't even define the violation. That's Malcolm for you, Marcus said from the steps. He runs this place like he's a sheriff from a spaghetti western. Desmond chuckled. Well, the sheriff's about to get deputized by reality. We'll respond formally. What does that mean? I asked. It means, he said, we'll make them prove this violation exists. And when they can't, we'll make them explain why they keep harassing you. He drafted a short letter on his tablet, printed it at my house, and told me to drop it in their mailbox myself. I did exactly that, folded it once, slid it into the HOA's drop box, and walked away feeling like I'd just set a timer on something explosive. By evening, my phone started lighting up. Messages from neighbors. Heard you hired a lawyer. Malcolm's freaking out. There's an emergency board meeting tomorrow. No surprise there. I sat outside again that night, letting the blower hum fill the air. The mermaid spun lazily inside the globe, shimmering under the streetlight. Clara wandered over again, a wine glass in hand. You really stirred it up, she said. Didn't mean to, I lied. She smiled. You're lying. Yeah, I said. It feels kind of good. The next day, they held the meeting. I didn't attend, but I didn't have to. Everyone else did. Word spread fast. Malcolm had slammed the table, waved Desmond's letter around like it was a death threat, and declared war on defiant members who mock the integrity of the community. That was an actual quote, by the way. Afterward, Marcus came back laughing so hard he could barely breathe. He's losing it. Lydia tried to calm him down, and he accused her of being soft on decorative degeneracy. I shook my head. He really said that? Word for word. The next morning, they retaliated. The HOA newsletter, which no one ever read before, suddenly showed up in everyone's mailbox. The front page featured a grainy photo of my inflatable, with a caption underneath, "Is this what our neighborhood represents?" I laughed so hard I nearly dropped it. Then I noticed the signature at the bottom, President Malcolm R. Holt. That was the first time I'd seen his full name printed anywhere, and somehow that made it worse. He'd made it official. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was policy. Desmond wasn't fazed. Good, he said. He's just documented his bias. That'll help later. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what later meant. By that afternoon, I noticed something new. 2 houses down, a neighbor had put up a tiny inflatable flamingo globe, pink, cheerful, and clearly mocking the HOA. Then another house joined in with a penguin, then a third one with a unicorn. Within 2 days, half the street had glowing spheres in their yards. It looked like some bizarre carnival, and Malcolm absolutely hated it. He went door to door, shouting about decorative discipline and restoring neighborhood dignity. People started closing their blinds when they saw him coming. Then came the next escalation. The HOA started issuing warnings to everyone. Not just me. Anyone with an inflatable, a wind spinner, or even a decorative rock suddenly got a notice. Lydia quit the board that week. She dropped her resignation letter in the mailbox and didn't even attend the follow-up meeting. Clara told me she'd said, "It's not worth it anymore." But Malcolm didn't stop. A few nights later, a truck drove slowly past my house. No headlights, just idling along. I couldn't see who was driving, but it stopped briefly near my yard before speeding off. When I walked out the next morning, there was a spray-painted message on the sidewalk. "Take it down." That was new. Marcus saw it first. "You think that was Malcolm?" I shrugged. He wouldn't do it himself. Then who? Someone who thinks they're helping. I took photos, sent them to Desmond. He replied within an hour, "Keep everything documented." This is turning into harassment. I knew he was right, but the weird thing was, I wasn't scared. I was just tired. Tired of pettiness, tired of power trips, tired of being told how to live on my own property. That evening, I turned off the blower for the first time. The yard fell silent. The deflated globe sagged like a giant puddle of plastic. The mermaid twisted inside it like a trapped ghost. I left it there, just a quiet pile on the grass. No lights, no movement. Around midnight, I looked out the window again. The street was empty, quiet, almost peaceful. But as I turned away, I caught something, a reflection. The faint beam of a flashlight sweeping across my yard. Someone was out there again. This time, I didn't move. I just watched. The beam stopped at the deflated mermaid, lingered, then slowly rose toward the house. And then the light went out. The day of the HOA meeting, the community center was packed. The air smelled like cheap coffee and stale donuts. People whispered to each other, glancing at me and then at the front where Malcolm and the board were setting up. I took a seat near the back, just in case things got ugly. Malcolm stood at the podium, clipboard in hand. He looked ready to explode. His suit was wrinkled, his tie crooked, and his face red. He cleared his throat, then began. "We are here to discuss repeated violations of community standards," he said. His eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal, specifically the property at 47 Maple Drive. I leaned back in my chair. That was me. Lydia was seated behind him, looking uncomfortable. I noticed her hand fidgeting with a pen. Marcus sat 2 rows ahead of me, smirking, whispering, "This is going to be beautiful." Malcolm went on, reading excerpts from letters he had sent, evidence he claimed showed indecency, harassment, and a complete disregard for the integrity of the community. He even showed photos of my inflatable mermaid globe, backlit by streetlights, with kids and neighbors laughing in the background. I raised my hand. "Excuse me," I said. I don't see any actual violation here. Just one decorative item. One. That's literally what your rules allow. The room went quiet. Malcolm's face went redder. You will not interrupt, he barked. Desmond stood from the back of the room. Actually, he said, walking forward, he is correct. The bylaws are clear. There's no clause prohibiting this decoration. And your letters, repeatedly sent, are harassment. Malcolm tried to cut in, waving his hands. This is about community decency. Standards! Morality. Desmond didn't flinch. No, this is about your inability to follow your own rules. And now, every letter you sent is potential evidence against you, including your latest newsletter, which publicly mocked my client's decoration. The room started murmuring. Neighbors shifted in their seats, some nodding, some whispering. A few people were visibly smirking at Malcolm. I could see the anger building in him like a storm cloud. Clara stood up. Actually, Malcolm, she said, what about your own yard? You have 2 fountains in your front lawn, taller than 4 feet. Didn't the board approve that? Malcolm sputtered. Those are exemptions, Vivian added. And the neighbor on Elm Street has a sculpture you never complained about. So why him, and why now? Malcolm opened his mouth, but no words came out. Desmond seized the moment. It's simple. You're selectively enforcing rules, showing personal bias. And now, the whole neighborhood is watching. The room erupted in murmurs and whispers. Malcolm looked like he might collapse. Lydia put her face in her hands, groaning. The tension was thick. Then it got worse. Felicity, Malcolm's wife, stood abruptly, her face twisted in anger. You've humiliated us for the last time, she screamed. She slammed the meeting room door so hard a plaque fell off the wall. Chairs rattled, people jumped. Malcolm's face drained of color. Silence fell after the door slammed. The room felt heavier somehow. Malcolm shuffled papers, muttering, out of order, out of order. Desmond took a step forward. Sir, the meeting is perfectly in order. You just lost control. The murmuring neighbors started talking louder now, pointing out other rules the board had ignored. Oversized mailboxes, unapproved paint colors, fences over the limit. Malcolm waved his arms frantically, trying to regain authority, but everyone ignored him. I stayed quiet, leaning back in my chair. The board's power was crumbling in real time. It was mesmerizing. Malcolm tried one last tactic. If you all allow this to continue, our property values will what? Someone shouted from the back. Drop? Because your own incompetence is showing more than any lawn decoration ever could. Another board member, Lydia, looked pale. She whispered, maybe we should adjourn. Malcolm's hands were shaking now. He looked around, desperate. Everyone was watching him unravel. He turned red, then white, muttering, I am the president. I am the president. Then the strangest thing happened. A loud thud echoed from the back of the room. Everyone jumped. The door to the supply closet had swung open, knocking over a stack of unused binders. Papers flew everywhere, fluttering like confetti. People laughed. Malcolm's face went from red to green. Then he stumbled back from the podium, almost falling over. I whispered to Marcus, did we just break him? He grinned. I think we did. Desmond turned to the crowd. The board has demonstrated their inability to fairly enforce the rules. From this point forward, I suggest we document everything. And legally, everything they've done today counts against them. Malcolm backed out of the room, fuming silently, clutching his clipboard like a life preserver. Felicity hadn't returned yet. Lydia was still sitting, hands over her face. I glanced around. The neighbors were buzzing, some laughing, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The atmosphere had changed completely. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the mermaid spinning in my mind's eye. The globe wasn't even in the room, but I could see it. Ridiculous, loud, unstoppable. And now, apparently, so was I. As the meeting ended, someone whispered, he's going to retaliate. I didn't flinch. Let him try. The streets outside were quiet as I walked home later that night. But when I reached my porch, I froze. A flashlight beam was sweeping across the yard again. Someone was out there, lingering near the spot where the mermaid would go back up tomorrow. I didn't move. I just watched. And from inside the house, I heard a voice, soft, low, almost taunting. You think you've won? You haven't seen anything yet. The beam of light disappeared. The street was quiet again. But I knew it wasn't over. By the following week, things escalated fast. Word had spread about the meeting. Neighbors were emboldened. People who had stayed silent for years suddenly started speaking up. Even those who had been afraid of Malcolm were filing complaints about selective enforcement, inconsistencies, and outright harassment. Malcolm tried to fight back. He sent more letters, made more phone calls, demanded meetings. But it was like shouting at a hurricane. Desmond had prepared everything: letters, legal documentation, detailed logs of every interaction, every violation notice, every intimidation attempt. It was airtight. I watched from my porch as the first signs of real change began. Marcus and Vivian helped organize a community group to discuss HOA reforms. Clara and Lydia joined in quietly at first, then more openly. They were tired of the fear Malcolm had spread. The momentum was building. Malcolm looked increasingly desperate. He called an emergency board meeting, summoning every member, including Felicity, hoping to find some unified support. But the room was tense. People were tired of his tantrums. They refused to back him. One by one, they walked out or openly contradicted him. The pressure mounted when Desmond sent the HOA a formal demand: retract all violations, provide written apologies, and reimburse any legal fees for harassment. The letter threatened to pursue charges against the board for selective enforcement and abuse of power. Malcolm's allies began distancing themselves. It was clear no one wanted to be on the line for his mistakes. I stood by the globe that evening, the first one I put back outside after the meeting debacle. It spun lazily in the sunset, absurd and majestic at the same time. A crowd had gathered. Neighbors were laughing, taking pictures, and some even added their own small decorations. The entire street looked like a surreal festival of rebellion. Malcolm drove by slowly, fists clenched on the wheel. He didn't say a word. I could feel his frustration radiating. That night, a neighbor called to tell me he had stormed into a local coffee shop, ranting to anyone who would listen, only to be politely ignored. The next day, the HOA newsletter came out. It wasn't the usual passive-aggressive screed. Instead, there was a formal notice: Malcolm Holt had resigned as president. Several board members followed. They admitted errors in enforcement and promised to create fair, clear rules with oversight. It was a complete reversal. Desmond called it a victory. "We've not only defended your property rights," he said, "we've exposed the flaws and biases of an entire governing board." Neighbors stopped by to congratulate me. Clara shook her head. "I never thought I'd see the day," she said. Vivian laughed. "The man who ruled this street with fear is gone." Finally, even Marcus was grinning from ear to ear. "You didn't just win, you demolished their credibility. It wasn't just about me anymore." The street felt lighter. People were talking freely. Kids were playing. Decorations went up. And no one feared an overbearing board member dictating what was allowed in their yards. Malcolm didn't appear for weeks. When he did, he drove by quietly, avoiding eye contact, looking smaller somehow. He couldn't enforce anything anymore. The board had crumbled. His threats were meaningless, and everyone knew it. I walked past the globe. One evening, spinning slowly, the lights inside catching the last of the day. The neighbors were outside, talking, laughing, and taking photos of their own little decorations. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. For the first time in years, the HOA was nothing more than a background detail, powerless, silent, and irrelevant. And me? I sat back in one of my now legal chairs, sipping a beer, watching the sunset, feeling a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. Malcolm's reign was over. The board that had terrified the neighborhood for so long was finished. The street looked alive in a way it hadn't for years, ridiculous, chaotic, and free. The mermaid globe spun lazily, absurdly, perfectly, and I realized that sometimes the right kind of stubbornness can change everything. And Malcolm? He was gone, defeated not by one fight, but by an entire community finally refusing to bow down. The inflatable was still flapping, the neighbors still laughing, and the HOA was officially a joke. I leaned back in my chair. Finally, the war was over. The street, the decorations, the chaos. It all belonged to us now. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I smiled, watching the ridiculous globe spin in the fading light, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share.